Hey everyone, we're at Donkey Projections. I'm Eric, and we have Lucas as always.
Hey everyone.
And we also have a special guest today featuring Ethan Eblaghie. Make sure to subscribe to his channel.
Thank you very much for having me.
So today we're going to be talking about Biden's polling situation and how he's having kind of a blip a little in the polls. We're going to look at some individual states, we're going to look at betting odds, and we're going to start off with the national average.
Right, because looking at the polls, Biden is losing his lead a bit and Trump is going up. And with that being said, let's get right into it. So according to the national polling, Emerson College only has Biden up by 3 points. And this is an A-minus pollster. Like, we always like to complain all the time about, Trafalgar or those more right-wing pollsters, but Emerson's pretty reliable. It is an A-minus pollster. 3 points is really not a lot compared to what he's led before. That is pretty small. That's about how like Hillary was leading towards the end of the election season. So that's not too good to see. So he is dropping a bit, but there is one thing we have to clear up, in that Hillary did not have as much support Biden did. Yes, Biden is losing his margins a bit in these swing states compared to Hillary, but Hillary didn't have like 50% support in some of these states. Because if you remember, 2016 had a lot of undecided voters. And at the end of the day, the majority of those undecided voters split for not President Trump, but Trump. And as a result, that's why that Trump victory happened. The polls did not get it wrong in 2016. The only state that was wrong, according to the polls, was Wisconsin. Other than that, they were all within the margin of error. So it really wasn't the polls, it was the mainstream media that did push that narrative that she was going to win in a landslide, which the polls did not show that at all. Betting odds now. Eric, you can kind of discuss this.
Yeah, so as you see, for a while now, a few months, June, July, and most of August, Biden has been up in the betting odds for a while. At his highest point, it was like approximately a 35 to 60, so like a 25-point difference. So that was pretty good for Joe Biden. As you can see, that surprisingly has dipped a little along with some polls. He had a slight rebound, and we'll see what happens next. Betting odds aren't the best indicator of who's going to win the election overall, because they did have Clinton up in 2016 by a pretty good margin, and she did end up losing.
Right, and a potential reason for why this could be happening is because in 2016 everyone thought Hillary was going to win because according to the polls, everyone thought that, oh, the polls are wrong this year. So with that thought in their head, they think that Trump's going to win an upset again. But a lot of people don't know that the polls were really not wrong in 2016. Ethan, do you have anything else to add?
Sure. We can also see, as you noted, that the betting odds often aren't always directly correlating to the polls. Like in April and May, Trump was up in the betting odds by actually quite a bit, despite the fact that he was still down in the polls at that time. And so it's not always a one-to-one ratio, but that also comes to show that a lot of the factors that are a lot bigger in the news and a lot more visible to the public often shift the betting odds a lot more. So, like, for example, in June, when we saw the Black Lives Matter protests and the coronavirus handling, all of those kind of tainted the Trump administration's image a little bit, and that may have contributed to people thinking he would not do as well in the election. And so there are a lot of factors that could go into him gaining again in the betting odds now, but it's not exactly a correlation to the polls.
Because I genuinely don't think that this happened because of the Democratic National Convention. To be quite frank, in like my most neutral way possible, the Democratic National Convention was better than the Republican Convention. Completely honest there. So I think this is just people thinking, oh, 2016, Trump won an upset, we'll see that again, which I don't see that happening at the moment. But we do have to discuss polling because there has been some major, I don't want to say major, but there were some shifts for sure in a lot of these states. I've highlighted a couple. I did not choose to do Iowa, Ohio, Georgia, Texas because Trump was already leading in those, but we just want to check these where where Biden was leading by a lot, and that lead has since narrowed. Let's first start discussing. This one should be blue because we don't have more polling data from Nebraska second, sadly. Let's start first by discussing Minnesota. We made a whole video on this. Biden was dropping a lot, and we just saw him drop from a 5-point lead now. Now he's at a 4.6-point lead, and that's surprising. But again, Trafalgar. You can say, oh, 2016, they got it right. Yeah, because they first of all, they polled last. A lot of undecided voters, they got lucky that they were the last ones to poll. But they've gotten it wrong a lot already. 2018, they got plenty of polls incorrect there. They are known for being right-leaning. That's pretty much a fact at this point. I'm not trusting that it says even at all. And 5-3 gives it a C-. I would probably put it as C- as well. But Emerson does have Biden only up by 2. This should be a little bit concerning to the Biden campaign again, because this is only a 2-point lead. That is quite surprising to see. Is there anything else to add?
Not necessarily about Minnesota, but the blue wall overall, all 4 states have been experiencing the narrowing of margins. So, I don't know, let's go to Michigan or Wisconsin next. One of the states in the Rust Belt.
Right, and we did kind of expect this dip from Minnesota. It wasn't too much of a surprise. We kind of saw this coming because Biden really was at a high point. It was at 10 points. Now it has dropped to 4 points, which was a bit expected. Let's head to Michigan. Good idea. Because this is where Biden has led for a pretty long time at a pretty decent margin. Eric, why don't you discuss this one?
Yeah, so as you see, Biden's polling average right now is 6.3. At one point, it used to be 7 points. It used to be really, really high for Joe Biden. The overall narrowing of margins that was happening also applies to Michigan. When he goes to Wisconsin today, or I think he already did go to Wisconsin today to address the
protests in Kenosha.
The Kenosha protests, and to address that maybe potentially we can see some increase for Joe Biden, but we'll have to see. But Michigan at the moment is still polling pretty well, but they have been experiencing a drop.
Yeah, it's interesting to see. He was up at about 10 points before. Now he's at 6.3, but again, we got to check the pollsters. Trafalgar again. Trafalgar had it at actually had John James up in the polls in the Michigan Senate. I'll be quite frank, he's not going to win. John James has no chance at winning. Well, I don't want to say no chance, but it's very much unlikely that he wins. Change Research, another C- pollster, has Biden up by 6. I really don't want to trust these C- pollsters. But according to the polls, he is coming back. All right. Ethan, do you want to let's do Wisconsin now.
All right. So as we previously noted, Wisconsin was actually the only state in the blue wall that was not technically within the margin of error, meaning that the polls were not accurate here in 2016. But we also see similar trends occurring in Wisconsin that we do in some of the other Rust Belt states. Down in early July, we see Trump just barely scraping 40, and now he's climbing back up again. And he's at 44 at this point, which is fairly similar to the trends that we see in Michigan. This is interesting because, as Eric noted, there has been an escalation of the Black Lives Matter protests here in Kenosha, and several other events that could potentially help Biden rebound, even though Trump is also gaining. But we haven't really seen that happening just yet. So it is a bit of a question as to whether or not Biden will be able to regain ground here, given all of the events that are currently happening.
Yeah, I agree with you. I mean, he really was at a high point. It has decreased. Obviously, it's not going to be as close as it was here. When we first started our channel, he was about slight lead for Biden. Obviously, that has changed. But we did expect a shift towards the right because, again, Biden was at his ultimate high point. He was leading nearly 9.6 points. That's insane. We did expect a drop. 5.3 is still a decent margin, although that is pretty close to what Hillary's margin was, I believe. Is that correct? It was was it 6 points something? It was Hillary had a very big lead. going into election day in Wisconsin, and yeah, she did lose it. So that's interesting to take a look at. We'll check back on Wisconsin later as well. Let's discuss Pennsylvania now.
Yes, so as we see, the polling average in Pennsylvania has, in the first time in a while, reached 4.7. He's usually been at 5 points and 6 points, at one point even 8 points. But once again, the inevitable drop in the polls for Biden has happened, and Biden is now at 4.7. And Ethan made an interesting point about this, how Biden, for the past few months, his numbers have been staying relatively close to 50. Sometimes he has 51, sometimes he has 49, but it's been pretty consistent. What's changing the difference is Donald Trump's raise and decline. So Joe Biden has been pretty consistent in the state of Pennsylvania. Hillary Clinton did lose the state in 2016 to Donald Trump. It was a lot of the central part of Pennsylvania that voted for Trump. Maybe this year that will change. At the moment, we do have Pennsylvania as a lean.
Yeah, I agree. I do think that it is probably a lean still. We might actually move to tilt soon, but this is getting closer. But I do think Biden will probably win this at the end of the day. Should be no. I think, yeah, Trump did pull his ads out from here. Maybe he puts it in again, but we're not too sure yet. So we got to wait and see on that one as well. So we discussed the blue wall already. Blue wall is very important in that with the blue wall, Biden can win. That's it. That's all he needs. He's at 278 already with the blue wall. But let's discuss some of these other states as well. Let's head to North Carolina first. I've already pulled up. This is the one state that we do potentially see flipping red, according to our predictions. We currently have it as tilt D. We could move this to toss-up soon, considering that Trump is gaining in the polls a bit. Change research +1, only +3. The margin has very much narrowed from being like 1.8% now to only 0.9. So this is the first time in a while that it's actually dipped below 1 point. The last time that happened was about when coronavirus was starting. This was like Trump's high point. His approval rating was high. It has seemed to come back to that now, that a 0.9 point lead. North Carolina flipping would not be the end of the world for the Biden campaign because, again, he just needs the blue wall. But it's just an added bonus at that point. Potentially could flip. I give this one about a 55% chance of going to Biden, 45% chance of going to Trump. This really is probably one of those coin flipping states. All right. Florida. Oh, wow. We made a video together, all three of us together for Florida. Ethan, how about you take this one?
All right. So in Florida, currently Biden's up by 4.5, which is actually, again, not super unsurprising, especially because just a few weeks ago, he was up by like 7 points, which is really, not something that we see that often in a state as close as Florida. But we do see a similar story in Florida as to some of the other swing states, which is Trump making some gains, whereas Biden is making some mild losses, which is very interesting because, as Lucas noted, we did recently make a video together where we discussed how Governor DeSantis's coronavirus response had kind of hurt the reputation of the Republican Party in Florida. And whether or not that's wearing off, that could be a potential reason as to why Trump is making gains here again. But it is to be noted that Florida is the biggest prize out of the swing states, with the exception of maybe Texas. It has 29 electoral college votes, and it's the third biggest state in the electoral college. So it's kind of a must-win state for both sides, unless Biden wins the entire blue wall. So it's interesting to see who will end up winning Florida, of course, but it is very important because this state actually could be like the state that decides everything.
Yeah, I 100% agree with you on that. Very, very important state to win. Let's now discuss, let's go to Arizona first. Arizona is actually kind of interesting, the lead here. Eric, why don't you talk about this one?
Yeah, so Arizona is this new arising swing state. It had a pretty conservative foundation, but the Latinos and Latinas in this state really do try to express themselves. Most of them are heavy supporters of Black Lives Matter, and that is contributing to the Democratic rise here. Arizona, for the state that it is polling very well for the Democrats. Its average is 3.2. It has been higher before. This was another state that did narrow down. Change Research, which is a pollster that I tend to not trust, just like Lucas, does put Biden up by 2. I'm not sure if that's the most accurate number. Redfield and Wilton, I'm not sure if its rating does put up Biden by 9, but once again, these polls are a bit suspicious, and I'm not sure about the reliability. But the polls have dropped, though. Maybe Biden, once again, just needs to address all of his supporters and voters and not get out of touch with them.
Right. On Messages is a Republican pollster as well, so that's pretty much not trusted. Trafalgar has Trump up, but it's Trafalgar again. But it is interesting to see his lead drop a bit. We still have it as lean D right now. We are considering changing it to tilt D soon. Well, our next prediction video will come out pretty soon. That's definitely interesting to see. Final state is New Hampshire. We do see a slimming margin there. Let's see. Ethan, you want to take New Hampshire as well?
Yeah, sure. So New Hampshire was actually one of the closest states in 2016. It was decided by only a little more than 1,000 votes, and Hillary Clinton did, at the end of the day, win the state. But it does actually, I think, need to be noted that New Hampshire is really, really difficult to poll, just because it's a really small state, and its population is not distributed very evenly across the state. So it is very difficult to get a fairly even sample size in New Hampshire. So polls have tended to be very inaccurate in New Hampshire. Sometimes they're way too Democratic, sometimes way too Republican. It just depends on the election cycle. So it is very interesting that Biden has such a definitive lead this early on in the campaign, when typically we would expect it to be a lot closer. But again, we do see kind of somewhat of a similar story to the other places, in that Trump is making some gains. We do see the recent University of New Hampshire poll having Trump up by 2, but for the most part, the polls are still showing Biden in favor, which is very interesting. We do know that New Hampshire's Senate race is actually up this year, where Senator Jeanne Shaheen will be running for re-election. And so for the most part, it does still look to be leaning towards Biden's column, but we'll have to see if that changes or not.
Absolutely. All right, let's also quickly discuss what Biden's strategy should be here. And quite frankly, he shouldn't be focusing on North Carolina or Florida or Arizona. He should be focusing on the blue wall. He should focus on New Hampshire. He doesn't need to win any other state except for the blue wall, and he'll win the election if he wins every single Clinton state. If you take a look at that, with just that, he's already over. He doesn't need Florida. He doesn't need North Carolina. He doesn't need Arizona. Of course, they're good backups, but he should not be focusing his time on there. I think it's best if he just focused on the blue wall, make sure he wins that first locks it down before he tries to win any other state. I know Clinton did campaign kind of hard in Florida. That really was not necessary. She should have focused on the blue wall. She could have won that over. But anyways, that is the end of the video for today. Thank you, Ethan, for coming on. If you like this episode, please hit the like button. If you like our content, please hit subscribe and subscribe to Ethan's channel as well. We'll leave a link in the description. We'll see you in our live stream tomorrow of the Massachusetts Senate Democratic primary between Joe Kennedy and Ed Markey.
See ya.